Welcome to Fail It Forward, lessons for life, leadership, and turning failure into success. I'm John Lowry, your host. Today on the Fail It Forward podcast, we're thrilled to have Elise Mitchell. Elise is a 3-time CEO. She's been there and done that, but she's also spending a great deal of her time working with leaders in overcoming setbacks, in working through change. Elise was the founder of the Mitchell Communications Group, an Inc. 500 company, a company that worked with some of the largest brands in America, including Walmart and others. And out of that, Elise got a perspective of leadership that's so invaluable that now she is sharing with others through her writing and her teaching and her willingness to be on a podcast such as this one. Elise gives 5 questions that are absolutely critical in helping people through a moment of change. These 5 questions will be useful to you as you seek to overcome the change in your organization or in your company. And so with that, I don't want to delay any longer. Let's jump into our conversation with Elise Mitchell. Elise Mitchell, welcome to Spark in downtown Nashville. How are things today?
Thank you. Yeah, I'm excited to be here. It's just great to get dressed up and actually go somewhere. Because of the pandemic, we've all been homebound for so long. So it was just a delight to come. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Well, we are thrilled that you're here. I want to welcome you. And you're right. It is crazy, isn't it? And the world that we've been in. And it's really appropriate for today's conversation where we're thinking about change, we're thinking about setbacks and how to overcome those. Really, we've all been through a setback. I mean, COVID has been a worldwide, global setback in so many ways. And so I'm excited to kind of hear your perspective on it and what ideas you have to share with people about how to overcome some of those setbacks. But let's start with just a little bit in terms of your background and your story. Tell us a little bit about your career that has been so successful.
Oh, thanks, John. Well, it's been an interesting ride for sure. Most of my career was spent in the field of public relations. So I worked in corporate PR. I worked for a number of advertising and PR agencies. In fact, I started my career right here in Nashville at a PR firm. And then eventually I opened my own firm. My husband and I moved to Northwest Arkansas, Fayetteville, Arkansas.
Sure.
Very close to Bentonville. Most people know that was the home of Walmart. So it's in that neck of the woods. We were there for about 20 years. And I started a firm from scratch, built it to scale, actually had the opportunity to sell the firm and took on a global role with the parent company for about 7 years. And then we've moved back now to Nashville. I've moved on to the next part of my journey, which today I focus on executive coaching, leadership development, and do quite a bit of business consulting.
Yeah, that's outstanding. And we're so honored to have you teach for us here at Spark and work with all the clients here as well. And you always do a great job. And we're so grateful for your giftedness and sharing it with us.
Thank you. Well, there are some really fantastic businesses and, of course, a lot of really great leaders. So it's a privilege to work with them. Thanks for always letting me come down and be a part of what you all are doing here at Spark.
You bet. And so through your business career, you've experienced a lot of success, but that success didn't necessarily come easy. There were moments of change and moments of setbacks. Tell us about kind of one of those moments and how you were able to kind of move through it and how you were able to bring other people through it. I think that's really where we want to spend some time today is trying to equip people to think about how they can lead a team of folks through a moment of change or perhaps a challenge.
Well, for sure, one thing I've learned is that leadership is a journey, just like life is. It has its ups and downs, and it has its detours. And there's always these unexpected sort of crossroads moments that happen. And one of those in particular, I remember, was something I never could have foreseen would happen. Yet here I was, facing something that seemed to be like maybe the biggest obstacle I've ever faced in my career. So just to set the stage for that story, as I said, I had built a firm from scratch. We grew it to quite a size in the PR agency business. We had over 100 employees. Wow. We worked with companies like Walmart, Tyson Foods, J.B. Hunt, Procter & Gamble. We had some really fantastic clients. It was such a great ride. And for quite a bit of time, everything just seemed golden, like it seemed whatever we touched was going really, really well. And I know that we had a period of rapid growth. We grew over 500% in 5 years, and we we had a lot of suitors that wanted to buy us, although I said I would never sell, but don't ever say never. There was a great opportunity for us to become a part of a global organization, and we decided to take the leap. We thought, well, this is a fantastic chance for us to actually continue to grow the company. And so we sold the business. That was in early 2013, and we became a part of this global organization. And for the first 18 months or so, it was really fantastic. We were meeting people literally all over the world, starting to do work on projects, international work with clients, and we were all really stretching and growing as professionals. And I thought, this is just another great turn in our story. And then something unexpected happened. Our parent company bought some other companies, not surprisingly, because they were growing, but they actually decided to change up their structure as an organization and create sort of a new parent company, if you will. So all of us who had sold into the original organization, all of a sudden found ourselves transferred to a different management team that had different priorities, different goals, different values, different culture. And it was kind of a shock because, well, that wasn't what we had planned. It wasn't what we had agreed to. And all of a sudden, our whole operating environment changed. And at first, it was sort of interesting, getting to know new people. But it became pretty evident to me pretty fast that all of these things that we had been working on, our goals, our strategies, our priorities, were not going to materialize. Everything was changed. And I started to sort of fight that, and kind of keep putting our agenda back forward and keep trying to make things work out for us. And it wasn't working. No matter what I tried, John, I just kept hitting a dead end.
Wow.
And after a period of time, I found myself isolating myself as I became more frustrated and more angry and more bitter. And I got to a place, I kind of call this story the blue canvas lawn chair moment. I came to a place
Sounds like a country music song.
I know it does. I actually found myself sitting in one of those chairs, like a pop-up chair that you take to the ball game, and it was a blue canvas lawn chair. It had a little cup holder for putting your big gulp Diet Coke, and I popped open this chair and I sat in my backyard. And all I could do, I was in such a bad place, sort of emotionally, mentally, that I was having these escape fantasies. Like, oh, what if I could get out of this situation? Like, maybe I could get out of my contract, or maybe we could buy the company. I was like coming up with all these escapist fantasies. And after a period of time, I began to realize, this is not very productive because I'm not going to do that. But what am I going to do? Because everything I'm trying is not working. Then I found myself going into the woe is me, I'm a victim, nobody wants to see what I want, nobody wants what I want anymore. This is so unfair. It's like you almost can see yourself going through the stages of
stages of grief or whatever you want to call it.
The loss, loss of your dream, the loss of the promise, the loss of the hope, the loss of control. I mean, everything felt like it had gone away. And no matter what I kept trying to think through, nothing would work. And John, it was just this moment. That's why I call it sort of the blue canvas lawn chair moment. I've just sat there. I thought, there is nothing I can do. Nothing I can do to make this better. And it was in that moment that I actually sort of had this, mental experience of kind of floating out of myself and turning around and looking at me. And of course, I now know this is basically self-observation, which is how do I separate from what's happening inside my head, step back, and sort of see myself objectively. So I was experiencing a moment like that. And I turned around and I looked at myself and I saw me sitting in this blue canvas lawn chair. And I thought, that woman is a mere shadow of her former self. Like, where are you? Where did you go? Because right now what I'm seeing is not you at all. And I started to kind of have a conversation with myself, which was, my goodness, Elise, this is not the first time you've ever faced hardship. Haven't you faced challenge to build the company in the beginning? Wasn't it hard when you went through this and this and this? So I started kind of talking to myself, and I realized I've never let things like this defeat me before. Why am I so willing to give up now? And it was then that I began to say, I think at this moment I've now faced my biggest fear, which is fear of failure.
Yeah.
And worse yet, fear of public failure. Like from the outside looking in, it looks like I had failed. And that was my worst fear. But it was funny because when I began to sort of say it out loud to myself, my goodness, I think this is actually that moment you were most afraid of, that I began to say, but you know what? Stop and take a minute and look around yourself, and you will see life ain't that bad. Like, you've got your health, you've got your family, you've got a guy in the house who keeps coming out to check on you to figure out why you're still sitting in this lawn chair, who still loves you. Your company is still strong. Your people love you. All these things. I was counting my blessings. And I thought, if this is the worst you think things could ever be, it ain't that bad, and you need to kind of get back up again and get back in the game. But then I also had to figure out how to get back out of that chair, because I thought, in reality, maybe I think I have failed. But even if I fail, if I got back in the game for my people, they could still have a meaningful win. The company could still be very successful. We would find a new way to be able to move forward. It might not be the way I wanted or what I intended, but it could still be a win. And I thought, okay, so even if I lose, if I got back in the game for them, it would still be worth it. And at that moment, I got up out of the chair. I folded it up. I marched in the house. I handed the chair to my husband. I said, don't ever throw away this chair. We still have it. But I said, but if you ever see me sitting in it again, you need to say, hey, wait a minute.
Check on me.
Yes, you need to check on me. And maybe you need to have a conversation with yourself. And so from that moment, John, I found new motivation to re-engage. I recognized and realized that my worst fear really wasn't my worst fear at all. That in fact, my worst fear was not being proud of myself and how I was showing up when times really got hard. And that what I thought of myself was more important than what anybody else might ever think of me. Yeah. And I wanted to be proud of me. And that meant get back in the game. So I did. I went back to my team, my executive team, and I hijacked our next committee meeting, which was in just the next day or so. And I said, set aside all of your papers, whatever you guys had come in to report on at this meeting. We've got 5 questions that we're going to ask and answer, and we're not going to leave tonight until we do. And they all kind of looked at me like, what? What's going on? And I said, I need to start, though, by apologizing to you because I haven't been in the game. I've been feeling sorry for myself. But I want to be back in, and I want to win, and I want all of you here with me when we do. And so we worked through 5 questions and spent probably the better part of the evening together and really had a moment of sort of rethinking and reframing our perspective about the challenges we faced, and then saying we still want to win. We just have to find a new way forward.
So before we jump into those 5 questions, let's go back for just a second, because I think the journey from the chair to that meeting is a really important journey to reflect on a little bit. Talk first about the importance of the self-conversation, and give people who find themselves in that moment, give them a sense of what that conversation should look like for it to be healthy and for it to become a motivating thing for them.
Yeah, that's a great question, John, because you're right. I didn't know it at the time, but now, in the wisdom of hindsight, I'm like, oh yeah, like had I not really talked to myself in a challenging and helpful, healthy way, I don't know that I would have ever gotten out of the chair.
Out of the chair,
Because it felt really good to feel sorry for myself, but it wasn't getting me anywhere. So I think the first thing was I had to not only be honest and kind of step back and get some objective perspective on myself, right? So pull myself out of the emotional swirl and turn around and try to be a little more objective. But it was also important for me to figure out what was my fear. So there was a fear I had. How realistic was it for me to be afraid of that tiger that was staring me down? And I began to realize, well, I had built it up in my head to be afraid of failure. Everybody fails. That's what this podcast is all about.
Absolutely. We can do a whole podcast about it.
Failure, right. What a great idea, John. And so, yes, but I thought it was a commentary on me as a leader. If I failed, that must mean I'm not smart, not capable, didn't deserve to be in the role. I was viewing failure all wrong. And so I needed to be able to address the fear, face it, realize it wasn't as bad as I thought. And then also sort of reframe what was I really afraid of, which was losing self-respect, and that was so much more important to me that I said I'm going to be motivated to earn back my own respect for myself and how I was showing up. And then it was also, I think the motivation was, even if I can't win, does it matter to me that others could if I gave my all? And I think that's huge, because it was all of a sudden I set aside my own self-interests and I focused on the interests of others. And these were 5 people that I cared deeply about, who had been very loyal and faithful to me, had worked hard to help me build the company. They still had everything to win, but I needed to be in the game to help make it happen for them.
Absolutely. And to get there, you had to deal with a whole mess of stuff inside of yourself. And so what I want to do is I want to just give you a couple of different categories of areas that I think you probably had to do some work, and just get your thoughts in terms of each of these areas for someone that might be sitting in that blue chair right now. So first, the emotional aspect. What'd you do to manage the emotional piece of all this?
Well, I think it was just being so exhausted too, John, was I knew this, I couldn't let things stay the way they were. So I had gotten tired of the emotional drama and turmoil in my own head, that I said, it's time to take action. Something needs to change. So it may be that you sort of hit a breaking point of saying, no more. Even if I'm scared to death, I have to have the courage to take the first step to move out of this very unhealthy space.
And then once you were able to kind of process the emotion, then the mind could actually work again. And so the mental and the psychological, talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, so that's how your brain works,
That's
as
right.
I have now learned. Since I do executive coaching, I got a lot of training in neuroscience and behavioral science. And I now know that there are parts of your brain that control thinking, like the prefrontal cortex. And then there's that part, the unconscious brain, of the limbic system. A lot of people call it the amygdala hijack, is that emotional part of our brain. God built our brains to work exactly that way. But when we feel threatened, we get very defensive, and our brains, our thinking part of our brain starts to shut down, because all of our brain fuel and energy goes to protecting ourselves. And so I do think I wasn't able to see very clearly. I wasn't thinking very clearly to be able to sort of step, so the stepping back, the creating a little distance between myself and what the voices in my head allowed me to say, well, wait a minute. And I was able to start thinking again, because I toned down the emotions I was feeling. And, one of those simple techniques is labeling. That's a cognitive strategy. Name it to tame it. So I just name it, say, I'm feeling, and at that point I said, I'm feeling marginalized. I'm feeling lost. I'm sad. I'm grieving the loss of my dreams. And to just sort of say it made it seem a little more normal and a little more okay and acceptable to say, yeah, that's right, but I don't want to stay here. And that's where the mental part, the mindset shift, can begin to say, well, okay, then how can you get back up again and try to move forward from here?
Yeah, I've heard other people talk about experiences that they've had where, perhaps in a private way, they just found a time where they could pour it out. And they could just let the emotion run. And then they describe how once that's happened, it was a freeing experience to where now all of a sudden they could attack the problem.
Yeah.
And sometimes I think we're so quick to try to manage emotions that the best thing you can do is say, go find a space. Maybe it's a blue canvas chair. And just let the emotions roll, but don't let that be forever.
Right.
Let them roll, and then you're going to be at a place to where you can attack things in a healthy way. So as you began to search for how it is that you were going to work through this, and you started to experience the motivation of helping others find success, even though the success would never be what you envisioned, talk a little bit about the difference between the motivation that came from self and the motivation that came from serving your team.
Yeah, I think that was huge, Don. And again, I don't think I really recognized how pivotal that shift was, that mindset shift. I see it now. because I realized, oh my goodness, my love for these people, my care and concern for them, how loyal, how deserving they were of me being fully in the game for them. So it almost became a way for me to pay it forward or pay it back to them by saying, wow, you were there for me and showed up for me and for the building of this company for all those years when you could have taken other jobs or whatever. I knew they'd sacrificed to help us get where we were. And I thought, what does it say about you and your commitment to them if you can't be there for them when they need you the most? That's not really love if you aren't there when the chips are down. That's kind of a very artificial allegiance or commitment to another individual, especially a team that had been in the trenches with you for so long. And that powerful sense of otherish, if you will, the other focus, the selfless focus, and the focus on these 5 people. And then, of course, ultimately the whole overall team was powerful for me. And I think it tapped into my desire to be that servant leader, to be that good steward of here is opportunity, Elise, and you are staring it in the face. And all you do is think about your own self-interest. Like, come on, be there for other people, see the bigger win. And I think that's actually even more motivating to be there for others, because when you pour yourself into these other people, you begin to see how, and that's what happened in that meeting we went to, how they responded in those couple of hours we were together. It was life-changing for them. For me, it was game-changing for the company and where we went forward from there. And it was ultimately so much more rewarding for me to have sort of shown sacrificial love and commitment and support to them.
And that's the irony and the counterintuitive part of this, is that we're actually, despite the fact that, all of us have a challenge with being focused on self, the motivation to serve others is actually far more motivating than what you would do just for your own self.
Oh, yeah.
And, I think about it working out all the time. It's really hard to get out and work out yourself. But if someone's meeting you there at 6 a.m, you're not going to let them down.
Yeah.
You're getting up and you're going to show up, because it's not that you want to work out. It's just you don't want to let them down. It's the motivation in terms of serving others. So you hijacked this meeting and you asked 5 questions.
Yep. So let me tell you what those are. So the very first question is, what is our reality? Which is so important. When you sort of have your moment of crying or frustration or, kicking the dog or whatever it is, or you kind of cross the line in the sand, you say, okay, I'm going to stop being sad about this. Right now, I'm going to start being constructive and move forward. The very first thing you need to say is, what is? And I need to accept what is. I may not like it. It may not be what I was hoping for, but it is what is. And until you can answer that question and accept it, you can't think about what could be. So accepting what is, so I can begin to envision what could be. Because guess what? There's so much that you can do to change what could be. So the first question is, what is our reality? And that actually kind of became the gripe session, of like, well, we don't like it. This is not working the way we planned it. I'm like, yep. And I actually was kind of facilitating me, writing everything down, on this flip chart or the whiteboard, And then I said, okay, that's good to kind of get it out. It's good to vent, I'm in a safe place. Yeah. Second question is, what can't we control? And this is kind of builds on the first one, but what can't we control? Well, because this is important to acknowledge, to say, we're not going to focus on the things we can't control, but let's acknowledge what they are. Well, we can't control what's happening here. We don't get to make this decision anymore. This is the way things are going to be. So that was important for us to sort of get a reality check on the things we can't control. But then the next question was where the conversation began to turn the corner. And the next question is, what can we control? And once I asked that question, you could see them all go, oh, it's like the insights began to come, because I said, because guess what? There's still a lot of things we can control.
Sure.
And that's where I want us to put our focus. So then the ideas started flowing. You could just see the mood in the room began to shift as they started to say, well, you know what? We still have this awesome brand. We still have this great culture. We have these amazing clients. So look at all the people around here. They're all still with. And it sort of became, the rah-rah moment of we started making all these notes of look at all these basically the assets we still have that we are to be good stewards of. And And what that then leads you to is sort of that next question, which is, what do we want to achieve? And here, what I wanted to say is, okay, things are different, things have changed, but we still have a place to go, right? There's still a there out there for us to get to. What does the win look like now? So I said, what do we want to achieve? And that did change because we were like, well, we may not be able to accomplish this anymore, but now it's going to be that. And then the last question is, how does our strategy need to change? And that really helped us begin to put the operational game plan in place. And that's where we actually start pulling out the notebooks and the computers saying, well, wait a minute, we need to be able to, reorganize the teams in this way. We've got to approach business differently. Here might be our communication plan to the rest of the group about how we're going to move forward from here. And it really started things flowing that way of here's the productive sort of path forward.
Yeah, so as we sit here right in front of a quote from Dolly Parton that is so reflective. It says, if you don't like the road you're walking, start paving another one. Isn't that appropriate?
She's amazing. Wasn't she such a wonderful leader? Has showed up so beautifully in the pandemic for us. But wow, what a great, she that's timeless wisdom right there.
So as you think about her analogy to all of this, talk a little bit about how it is that people can help folks begin to pivot from the current road to a new road. What are some practical things they can do to help people get there?
Yeah, I think a big part of that, John, is your own mindset, which, of course, I had made the mindset shift while I was sitting in the blue canvas lawn chair. But I also knew that I was a little bit ahead of the team. So that night, I was trying to get them to make that mindset shift, to see here's what we're leaving behind that we can't control, what reality is. Here's what we can control and where we want to focus our energy on. And then how do we want to show up in this moment as leaders? And I went around to each one of them at the end of that meeting, grabbed them each one by the shoulders, and looked them right in the eye. And I sort of made a personal invitation to them all. I said, listen, I know this is going to be hard, but I am in it to win it. I'm going to be here, and I want you with me all the way through to the end. Are you in? And I sort of made that personal invitation to each one of them because I did intentionally want to know if they were in. Because if you haven't and can't make that mindset shift, it's important for the leader to know. And you don't want to be afraid to make the ask because I thought if some of them leave, well, I guess it's better to know it now and let them go because you only really want the people who can make the shift and begin to your question, have much more of a growth mindset about how do I view failure or challenge or obstacles as an opportunity to grow, maybe develop new skills, find that different road to walk down. All detours in life are not bad. Sometimes they help us open ourselves up to new potential that we didn't see where we were before, but now we have a new way forward.
So talk about that nuance just a little bit between telling a team about a new direction that you and them are headed down versus extending a personal invitation for them to walk down a different road.
Yeah. Well, I often remind myself of this every day. You'd think, we would all know this by now, but no two brains are alike. God didn't make us all exactly the same. We all think and process. We have different life experiences, different ways of seeing the world. So it's not unexpected that people view situations differently and begin to sort of count the cost. Am I really willing to be in this change? And I think the key there for the leaders, you can't force it. You can't say, this is my vision and you need to follow. That's our tendency. But it's much more powerful if you engage others to have their own insights and to see that vision. So very often I coach my clients now by saying, make the invitation to others by asking a question to say, when we achieve this goal, what will it be like? And let them, in their own mind, begin to paint the picture of the future reality. Like, oh, you know what? When we get there, it's going to be amazing. Like, we'll have more revenue. We can hire more people. We might be able to expand offices. We'd have different types of clients. I'm going to feel good about myself and how I showed up. I'm going to be a better leader. They see the benefits for themselves. And it makes it, they're much more committed to their own ideas than they ever are to ours. So when you make the invitation, you invite them to sort of join in this vision, but in the way that they see it. And you want to try to align, of course, as a team on how to get there. But each person having their own clear vision for success and buying into it themselves means, guess what? They're going to walk through fire with you and for you all the way through.
Yeah, it reminds me of a story that Coach K told when he came to Lipscomb. We had the opportunity to be with him, and he told the story about becoming the coach for USA basketball for I think it was the 2008 Olympics maybe. And here comes Coach K, and he walks into this room with LeBron James, Kobe Bryant, and, the world's best basketball players. And he was like, I'm kind of a big deal at Duke, but I'm a college coach. And these are like the world's best players. And he's like, I couldn't walk in that room. And so his starting point for the room, which is reflective of what you just said, is, okay, congratulations. You've all been named to the USA basketball team. We got an invitation to go to the Olympics. So, what do we want to do? What do we want to accomplish? And they were like, what? What are you talking about? What do we want to accomplish? He's like, no, it's an open question. What do we want to accomplish? And the gold medal, coach. And he was like, okay, well, if that's your starting point, then, and from there, he began to establish himself as a leader in terms of getting them kind of on that course. But many people would skip that step.
Yeah.
They would just assume okay, this is where we're headed. Everyone's on board, da-da-da-da. But there's value in terms of asking that question. What other lessons did you learn through this experience?
Well, I think it was, as a leader, I think a lot of us are this way. I move fast, and my thinking goes fast, and so I want my actions to go fast, and I'm eager for results. Get it done, get it done. Yeah. I've always been what I call a destination leader. Get the goal, get to the next one, see the next there, and keep going. Sometimes as leaders, we have to slow down a little bit and let people catch up with us. And that was me sort of reminding myself, Elise, you've already moved a couple of steps down this journey, this path on getting out of the chair and thinking ahead. They're not there. They don't even really know what's going on. Yeah. So as leaders, we need to stop and set context and give people permission and time to think. In fact, one of the leaders that night, he was my CFO, love him dearly, still very close to all those people today. And when I kind of went around the room and grabbed everybody by the shoulders, leave it to the CFO to kind of lean back a little bit, is she coming? Is she going to get that close to me? And he said, yes, I'm in. But I could see in his face, he wasn't sure. Uh-huh. So I thought, you know what? This will be interesting. I got to give him time to process. He needs time to think. Yeah. Because no two brains are alike, right? Sure. And Larry was a thinker. And so I thought, I bet I'll know, though, pretty soon. And sure enough, the next morning, I came in the parking lot, walked in my office, my phone was ringing. It was Larry. He said, hey, I saw you pull in. Can I come and talk to you? And I was like, here it comes. Either he's with me or he's not. And either way, it's okay. He came in, closed the door. I kind of looked over. I thought, oh, no, are you in? He said, I'm in. And he and I proceeded to have probably the most powerful conversation the two of us have ever had. Ended up praying together, shed a couple of tears, giving each other a big hug. He said, I'm all the way in. And he sort of apologized. I'm sorry I couldn't. I said, no, don't be sorry. We all need time and space to process. And so I think that was kind of a key lesson for me is don't rush so fast. Yeah. Give people a chance to be on the journey by choice with you and make room for everyone who wants to go on the ride.
Sure. And so as you think about the ride, talk a little bit about, you mentioned it before, the growth mindset. Mm-hmm. What is that all about?
Well, I'm a big Carol Dweck fan. She's the Stanford psychologist, wrote the book, did a very famous study with some colleagues on why do some people face challenge and they sort of give up and they say, that's too hard. I can't do math, or I don't remember names, or whatever it is that we all say. I remember I used to say, I can't paint, I can't draw, I can do a stick figure. But that was a story I told myself that I couldn't do something, and so I refused to even try. The honest truth of it was, in my case, in that situation, I was afraid of looking foolish in the try because I didn't really know how to paint, for example. Mm-hmm. And so I think we often kind of say, I'm just not good at X. But Carol Dweck's study and the whole concept of growth mindset is that we all have abilities and intellect that can change if we apply ourselves. And that very often the first attempt is kind of a sloppy attempt,
Sure.
Most things in life are. Yep. But that's not something to be afraid of or ashamed of. It is it's part of the learning journey. And so what you say is, gosh, I don't really know how to do this. What an interesting challenge this is. You rub your hands together and say, we're going to learn a lot as we go. And as a good leader, you would then invite your team to say, let's figure this out together. And there were so many times, John, in the building of my company where people would run into my office with a problem and say, what are we going to do? And I'd think, I have no idea. But I would say, you know what? Let's figure it out.
Yeah.
And it's okay to say you don't know, but you can't end the sentence there. You just must do whatever it takes to find out and invite people to go on the learning journey with you.
So you have the opportunity to work with a lot of companies and a lot of leaders. And we're nearing a place where we can start to think post-pandemic. We're not quite there yet, but we're getting there. And so as you start to think about this and kind of where we are, what do you see the best leaders doing to prepare their teams and to lead, to get ready for the recovery of post-pandemic? And then what seems to be holding some leaders back right now that you see?
I think it really revolves around this idea of willingness to change because we're fundamentally afraid of change, right? Our brains are afraid of uncertainty.
Absolutely.
We spend all our time trying to create certainty and structure and predictability in our lives. And when you face really uncertain times, it makes people sort of withdraw and try to protect. And so as a leader, what you're trying to do is encourage people to sort of come out of their protective mindset, sort of open their mind to see potential and to say, maybe this is a good opportunity for us to fill in the blank, launch a new product or service, pivot in our company, develop some new skills, hire some new talent, expand our thinking in a new way. So disruption and uncertainty also creates opportunity for innovation and change. And so getting people to shift that mindset of, I'm worried, I'm scared, what if this doesn't work, sort of the threat mindset, to that open or that toward mindset, which is moving toward opportunity, being curious, being a little courageous in the try to see if we couldn't be willing to go into a new place. When our agency went through 2008 and 2009, I often tell people this last year, a lot of my clients, I said, hey, that was actually, believe it or not, was the first year of our 5-year growth of over 500%. It started then. And we grew exponentially over the next 5 years. Isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
But it just kind of shows that if you're willing to lean into change and have some courage to try some things, there'll be a few things that'll actually really work and can provide new ways forward. But you want to sort of encourage people to have the courage to try.
Yeah, I think it's hard for people to grasp the idea who just aren't fundamentally just born this way, to grasp this idea that not everything has to work. Just some things have to work in order for there to be success. I mean, it's very rare. And in fact, you're kind of destined to failure if you live in such a way to where everything has to work, because that's just not going to happen.
Right.
And so this notion of saying and getting a team to embrace the idea of, listen, we're going to pursue 5 things and let's just be real. 3 of them probably aren't going to work. But if 2 do, then wow, we will have changed. We will have taken a step forward.
Right.
And for some people, that's just hard to embrace the idea that failure will be a part of success.
Yeah. I always used to think of it, I call it creating a culture of try, which is how do I as the leader give people permission to try, to say there's a no embarrassment, no punishment rule around here. Like, I'm not going to embarrass you or punish you if something doesn't work. In fact, we had a client that had this sort of annual awards program, President's Awards, and one of their awards they gave was the Best Try Award. And they were trying to praise and recognize a team or an individual who had an idea. It didn't quite work in its original form, but guess what? It led to something else. And that's why we sort of, hey, Elise, remind yourself, it's not just the destination, it's the journey that is important. And if people can see that, it's not just hitting the goal or reaching the number, whatever the result is. It is the experience of how we get there that makes us stronger, better, wiser, faster leaders.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, Elise, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for just investing all this energy and wisdom into this podcast, for the 5 things and those 5 questions that were transformative in that particular moment and on that journey with your PR company. You can find more information about Elise at elisemitchell.com. And you can come experience Elise right here at Spark in terms of some of the executive education programs that we offer. But Elise, we're just so honored to have you stop by today, and thanks for a great conversation.
Thanks for having me, John.